So the youth have completely kind of, repurposed the oppression by the state. And that is the meaning of meme, right? That you mimic something, but in that you twist and you add your own thing. So the therapy that people are eating food there because people from all over the world are like sending food through food delivery apps there. So when they are eating, they put a poster there saying this is the feast for Modi's funeral.
When I'd written about the students who were fasting, one boy's name is Amin. He actually is Sikh, but people assumed that he was Muslim. And somebody wrote a really sweet, caring message. He said, "तुम क्या कर रहे हो? मत कर छोटे भाई, मत कर. बाकी लोग फिर भी बच जाएंगे, तुम्हारी जिंदगी बर्बाद हो जाएगी."
Things that one constantly is being told, चुप कर लो, थोड़ा सा silence ठीक है. You know, the institutions are longer than political regimes. Everyone has got used to, of our generation, got used to a grammar of silence. We found ways to speak, but it was always in hushed tones, or those who were scared of what you would say would not want to participate in a conversation. The young have found satire. And it is just, it's the sarcasm, the satire, the way of just no holds bar. I am going to speak, and I'm going to speak so loudly that I'm going to strip you of a grammar to challenge me.
So, changing an education secretary or even getting the resignation of the education minister is not a solution. I think that the crisis of education in India is very deep. And that crisis can only be resolved through structural change, and also moving away from privatization and commercialization of education to much greater emphasis on public institutions and public education.
Salam, Namaste, Zindabad. This is Harsh Mander here. One more episode of our series, the Karwan-e-Mohabbat with Scroll, called Yeh Daagh Daagh Ujala, where we discuss the state of our republic. As we're sitting here today, this is the fourth day after the now historic march of young people to India's parliament from Jantar Mantar. It is a day after Sonam Wangchuk broke his fast. It is a moment where young people have taken control of a movement which is in which they are expressing many things to the older generation, to the government, even to their parents, I'm sure. It is a moment in which history, I think, is being made at this moment. This morning, I sat with three young people who were central to the protest, some who fasted, and understood from them what is it that young people are trying to say, what is it that has brought thousands of young people onto the streets of Delhi. But in this second part, which I'm doing now, I thought I would talk to teachers of young people and ask them the same question. How do they understand? What is it that has compelled thousands of young people to face police batons, to face the risk of being locked up, to face the disagreement of their parents, to face uncertain futures? What is it? Why is it that they're here on the streets? And I just wanted to. Here's a list of at least some of the cities across the country where this is happening. And I just quickly read. Kurukshetra, Chandigarh, Jammu, Dharamsala, Jaipur, Jodhpur, Lucknow, Prayagraj, Allahabad, Unnao, Rampur, Bhopal, Indore, Ahmedabad, Surat, Patna, Bilaspur, Raipur, Indore, Kolkata, Jadavpur, Bangalore, Davangere, Kalaburgi, Guwahati, Aizawl, Itanagar, Shillong, Agartala, Hyderabad, Visakhapatnam, Vizianagaram, Rajamundry, Chennai, Thiruvananthapuram. And this is an incomplete list. Something is happening, something is stirring. And it is, it is to understand what it is that has compelled our young people to come onto the streets. I have three really fine, well-respected, all of them happen to be political scientists, but that's not really why they're here. They're here because they have been teachers and have extremely sort of sensitive understanding of India's political economy. Zoya Hasan is a Professor Emerita, political science in Jawaharlal Nehru, and a very leading commentator. We have Saroj Giri. He also currently teaches political science in Delhi University. We have Yamini Aiyar, who is teaching at Brown University, but before that she was the president of the Center for Policy Research. Let me just quickly launch right away into the conversation. My simple first question is, what in your understanding has brought tens of thousands of young people onto the streets? We know the details of what sparked, there was a meme, there was a Chief Justice's remark, there was a meme, it somehow struck a chord, and there was then a hunger strike, a protest. All of that we know. But now what is happening is quite well beyond how this started. Young people are on the streets protesting in ways that we've never seen before, with the courage and spirit that is extremely rare, despite being, the night after the police, broke their bones, smashed their heads, you have the kids coming back in bandages and more young people coming back in large numbers. They're saying something to us. What is it, Zoya?
Thank you. I think it is, as you are indicating, a youth uprising, and a very significant one, dominated by students. But this uprising, I think, reflects accumulated grievances. Most of all, I think there's an economic frustration behind this, which was there, but it was overshadowed by Hindutva politics, by Hindu-Muslim politics. But there are accumulated grievances, and I think the most important reason for the economic frustration is really job opportunities. There's simply not enough job opportunities. The government promised 2 crore jobs, and in fact, every year, far from it. I mean, we are far from it. And then I think it is also, there is a lot of talk.
Also, just to interrupt you, it's not just that we're not creating more jobs, even the jobs that are existing are getting casualized.
No, but I think this has a lot to do with our growth model. While we talk about high growth, the fact is that this is growth without jobs. It's jobless growth, and that has a lot to do with the growth model that we have followed, which is different from the Chinese development model, which focused on manufacturing. Here the focus is on the service sector, and there are only that many jobs that the service sector can provide. It's really manufacturing based that would have provided jobs, which we don't have. So I think jobless growth is a very, of course it's a feature of neoliberalism, but it seems to be a particularly distinct feature of the Indian model of growth, and I think we have to take that into account. Two, I would say there is a sense which was probably there, but it was not noticed, and that is that institutions are very unresponsive. there is this whole issue of accountability of institutions, and I think that has come to the forefront. Three, and very, very importantly, I would say, is that government has retreated from public education. Public education has been central to the growth of education in most countries, including in our own. But over the last few years, there has been a huge retreat from public education, from government schools, from public universities, and
both school and university
and Indian universities are in a bad shape for a variety of reasons. For example, 40% faculty positions in universities remain vacant, and this has been pointed out for the last so many years. Even IITs, about which we make which are so important and which have been at the center of, in a way, in India's growth as well. Even there, Madras IIT and so on, 50% jobs, positions have not been filled. Then I think there is this whole centralization of education, which is again very particular to this government, which has gone out of its way to centralize higher education. And not only are faculty positions vacant, but those that are being appointed are pretty incompetent. And everyone is saying, for example, I can speak of my own university, although what I hear from my colleagues now who are teaching in Jawaharlal Nehru University, that the new faculty appointments that have been made in the last 10 years or so are fairly incompetent. They're often not in a position really in a position to teach.
Also ideologically committed.
That, of course. Then I think very importantly, there's also a crisis of the whole testing system. The NTA, the National Testing Agency, which seems to be this government's contribution to dealing with competitive exams. What is amazing, I was reading this morning, I think in the Hindu, that not a single officer in the NTA has been appointed. They're all on deputation from different ministries. So now here, the NTA is at the center of it, and you find that there too you are not appointing people who can, who are experts in it. And then, of course, finally, as you have pointed out, there's, I think, at the heart of it is a feeling that young people have, which is that they really don't have opportunities. There's a crisis of opportunities, and I think also I went to Jantar Mantar, and on that particular day, of course, there was huge. It was just brimming with people, young people. But what really struck me and what stood out was that it was a non-elite crowd. It was not really upper middle class or people who've been to Delhi Public School or to St. Stephen's and or even to IITs and so on, or some of the best universities in India. I was really struck by the ordinariness of people who were there, and for them government jobs is the only way out, because many of them are not in a position to go abroad for education, as most upper middle class families are able to send their children for education abroad. They depend on public education, they depend on public sector jobs, and for them competitive exams is the only way to get a government job, even a clerical job. We know that in UP, even for a clerical job, lakhs of people, or for a railway clerk's job, lakhs and lakhs of people, or Agniveer. These are all jobs for lower middle class people, and they are, at least what I could see and what I've been able to understand is that they are really at the center of this protest.
So Saroj, do you see this as a protest principally about jobs and education? This is and the collapse of public education, or is there something else that young people are saying?
No, what I would say is, this moment. I think we have to think of it as a moment that we are experiencing, witnessing. It's a kind of a moment, I think, which And we all feel that there's something, which is not the usual, ordinary. There's something which is not the normal kind of protests. There's something which is kind of very transcendent about it. So it feels like, like some decades are condensed into, in fact, I would say just one day, the 20th of July. What is that? V for Vendetta. They have a thing, no, in that movie. Remember there's a 5th of December. So it is remember the 20th of July. Because what you see, if you look at just the 20th of July, if you were to just zero down on just one day, because there's so much going on, just one day, then you will see the march starts at 9 a.m. So 9 a.m., then around 5 or something, it kind of ends, as in it dissipates. There's lathi charge, there's police brutality, But after that, when most people are leaving the Jantar Mantar and the Parliament Street near that park hotel, going towards CP, what happens is the protest does not end. It gets into Connaught Place and Janpath. And what happens, there is a blockade there. And I still remember I was there, that suddenly Connaught Place is like blocked by the protesters.
By the protesters.
And then it continues till actually that does not end.
Yeah.
Because then,
only grew.
Then there is pathrao, stone pelting, tear gas shells. And I remember India Today,
by the police.
by the police, of course. India Today does live then, from there around that time. And I remember the reporter is there on top of a building and she's saying, look here, on Janpath, in Connaught Place, of all places. And that's a normal day, people just thought that's a usual protest, it's going to end. So then the police comes down charging, and you know what they do in Connaught Place? They go and round up any working class looking kind of people, they just arrest them, detain them, beat them up. Now this is apart from the actual official protest. So what happens was that this got a life beyond the protest which was happening under the Cockroach Janata Party at that venue in Jantar Mantar. So today when we go there, and we all know this, that the protest has kind of further it has intensified into some other protest. So there's a protest within a protest. So in fact, nobody is actually going to the main venue from where it all started, where the dais is there and all the big leaders. The other day, Sharad Pawar came there, Rakesh Tikayat came there, big leaders are coming. Nobody is even looking at the big leaders who are going there. Nobody is going into the dais where it actually started from, and yet, of course, there's a lot of activity going there also. But the main theatre is outside, and even outside you will see there's this one street where there is mostly like all kinds of slogans and people just having fun and all kinds of memes and mischief and all kinds of things are going on. And of course, one thing that you are going to notice there is that people are just like speaking, venting out unfiltered. So there are a lot of abusive words that they're using, what is called politically incorrect. Galis, abuses to Modi, right? And all kinds of memes that you would like kind of normally not really want to see those, right? But the other one, just to add this, is the other theatre is on the one end on the Parliament Street, which is where the confrontation is, the police is still going on. Yesterday night I was there till 2 in the morning. And at 2 in the morning, you wouldn't believe that the barricades are still there. Right at the red light from where the Jantar Mantar road goes towards and joins to Parliament Street. So you have the Parliament that side. So there is barricading. There is barricading on the YMCA side, and it's open towards the Connaught Place side. And there were at least 20,000 people at 2 in the morning.
Right.
And they are sitting there eye to eye with the police. So, and the youth are not fearing the police at all. Whatever they are doing, in fact, there was this one video where they snatched the baton from one of the police. So the youth have completely kind of, repurposed the oppression by the state. And that is the meaning of meme, right? That you mimic something, but in that you twist and you add your own thing. So the teravi, that people are eating food there because people from all over the world are like sending food through food delivery apps there. So when they are eating, they put a poster there saying this is the feast for Modi's funeral, Teravi.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Normal eating is turned into an act of resistance and protest. So this is a completely new vocabulary. This is absolutely something which the educated elites, caught in their own old shibboleths of protest and resistance songs could never think of. So they are thinking on the spot and reacting and reinventing, as they go. So I think this is something which the government is not able to handle, political parties are not able to handle, and it's far beyond the Cockroach Janata Party. It's far beyond Sonam Wangchuk. So this is a completely new thing, and I think it's a challenge for all of us. Also to try to understand this, it's a new vocabulary, new language.
That's exactly why we're having this conversation. We owe it to young people to understand what has brought them to the streets and what they're trying to tell us. Yamini, you and I found each other that morning on the 20th at Jantar Mantar among the crowds, and we went and met the fasting students. And then it just took a life of its own. And I was there. In fact, I chose not to be at the head of the thing, but to be in the middle of the students. And I was just getting swept here and there. But there was an energy that was, this was even before the Lathi charges, there was an energy that was very, very special. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Buddhist, Dalit, rich, poor, man, woman, none of that seemed to matter. They were all together, marching together, protecting each other, reaching out to each other. There was a good cheer, there was all of this. And then the police came down. The other thing that struck me a lot was, I went at night thinking I was going to go and, offer solace to students whose spirit would have been broken. And I was confronted by no spirit was broken. It was like
Absolutely.
high energy, coming with their bandages and whatever and so on. And still returning with a kind of determination. It has nothing now. It's just its origins is of sort of historical interest, but it's got nothing to do with its origins. They found this moment.
Yeah.
And what would you say is your sense of what our young people are telling us?
So I think what was really amazing about Monday morning was I'd been in and out of there before, as had most of us, and it wasn't quite clear what texture this was going to take. Something was happening, but what that texture wasn't clear. There were old forms of protests. The hunger strike itself is an old and very important part and parcel of how we express our democratic rights. But there was also something else. Who was there? The standard kind of format of protest was taking place on the stage. And once you went behind the barricades, even when there were 300, 400 people, 50 people, there were a range depending on what time of day and what day. The people who were coming just were very different. And by that I mean there was a kind of, usually a protest articulates a particular interest group's sense of anxiety. This was many different types of people all coming together and expressing anxiety. And it wasn't even clear entirely, of course, the exam, education, the economic anxieties, but particularly NEET and the demand for a minister's resignation were at the center. But it just felt something else was going on. And on Monday, it all just came alive and has stayed alive. So to add to many of the very complex layers of what's happening that we have heard from both Zoya ji and Saroj, I will say, one way I've been thinking about this, and I felt this a lot even in the 2024 election in UP when, the election campaign was underway, is that the economic anxiety, it runs very deep. You could argue it's not new in the sense that, as was said, this has been the nature of our economic growth has always been jobless. This has always been a deep challenge in the structure of our economy. From the 1990s onwards, we went through that phase in 2000s where the rights-based mobilization generated a grammar of inclusive economic growth, which enables some mobility, no doubt. But there have been a series of both exogenous shocks and demonetization, GST, all kinds of things, economic imagination of the current government that deepens and entrenches the cronyism and all of that, which we don't need to repeat. The deep inequality. But the way in which that inequality was being expressed, and to me that's the heart of this protest too, it was being expressed in a constitutional language of rights. हमारे हक हमसे छीन के ले जाएंगे अगर संविधान को बदला जाएगा. It was this grammar of rights, which, you know, we've always been told the Constitution was an elite imagination, which the constitutional morality had to seep down through the soil of this undemocratic nation, and yet this vocabulary has seeped down. And so I kept, you know, when I try to make sense of what happened in UP, it struck me that we are kind of seeing the economic anxieties being expressed in a democratic grammar, and that democratic grammar is often put aside. You know, after all, the Hindutva entrenchment runs deep in our society as well. But when it comes to it becoming too much, it is that sentiment that comes alive. And so this broadening of the protest from a singular demand or a singular issue to what we are seeing in all these memes and the language of people, and a poster behind saying "Mazduron ke bhi haq hai," and it integrated into a poster on accountability and democracy. And I think that is where this protest is taking us. It's taking us to a place where our young are saying enough is enough. We understand that our rights will only be recognized in a democratic language. It is this democratic language that has been suppressed for the last decade in a very blatant and visible way. And the police brutality, which has exacerbated the mobilization, is almost reinforcing what the young were feeling, and now they've found a vocabulary through which they can draw on it. What is also really unique for me, you know, we have all been subjected to the traumas of the coercion of the state, and, you know, things that one constantly is being told, chup kar lo, thoda sa silence theek hai, you know, the institutions are longer than political regimes. Everyone has got used to, of our generation, got used to a grammar of silence. We found ways to speak, but it was always in hushed tones, or those who were scared of what you would say would not want to participate in a conversation. The young have found satire. And it is just, it's the sarcasm, the satire, the way of just no holds bar. I am going to speak, and I'm going to speak so loudly that I'm going to strip you of a grammar to challenge me. And that is what, again, another very important element of what we are seeing, which is pushing us, I think, in new ways of trying to understand the grammar of protest. And to me, I'll just end with this. I was thinking about this as I was coming here, just coming off of out of Jantar Mantar. There is the most heartening thing in so many ways is all these young people, many of whom have voted for this government, who have been part and parcel of all the WhatsApp brigades that have been extremely bigoted in how they imagine India. And I am constantly being told, in fact, all of you in this room are the people I go to when I feel so frustrated. You know, secularism is not a language that people are interested in anymore, etc., etc. The best way to help the Muslim is by not mentioning the Muslim. Or, you know, this is just, and here are these young people who are openly saying, "Jab jab Modi darta hai, Hindu Muslim karta hai." They are asking for something else. However, it isn't that that entrenched sense of majoritarianism has left. So what is it that is happening to our, I feel almost like there's an interesting intersection and a contradiction, that in protest our grammar is of our values, our core founding values, in which equality, justice, secular identity is at the heart of it. And people are very clearly saying, we don't want this bigotry, we don't want this Hindu-Muslim anymore. But are we ready to internalize what that actually means in a democratic context and think about all the things that we have done wrong that have got us here, including of the young who have participated in different ways in a lot of this exclusion?
So Yamini, two very different questions, and I don't know. Let me talk one just about the Muslim young person. You know, this is not the first time young people have risen up.
Yes.
They did rise up in 2019.
Yes.
They did rise up, and they did. It was an organic movement. It grew. The way the state responded. I mean, Jamia. We still remember the images of what happened in the library. I had gone to Aligarh Muslim University just after. We did the first fact finding. I'll never forget what I saw there. They used what are called stun grenades, which are meant to, get people out of terrorists when you throw a stun grenade there. They'd thrown it into hostel rooms of students. It was treating it like a war zone of the enemy. There was solidarity in 2019-20, but there wasn't this. There is the sense of and yet Muslim young people, there was this couple of of these messages that came out. One was when I'd written about the students who were fasting. One boy's name is Amin. He actually is Sikh, but people assumed that he was Muslim. And somebody wrote a really sweet, caring message. He said, "तुम क्या कर रहे हो? मत कर छोटे भाई, मत कर. बाकी लोग फिर भी बच जाएंगे, तुम्हारी जिंदगी बर्बाद हो जाएगी." He was saying this in a very caring way, and there was a consciousness that a Muslim in protest is very different from other people in protest. I think that's something that we have to recognize and be sensitive to. The other was that our kids have been raised, kid of around 18, 19, 20, the only government they've seen is Modi for 12 years. This is the climate in which they have been raised. They've not seen anything else. For them to, somebody sent out the second message, which I would say, it said, "Remember this, your parents hated Muslims more than they loved you. Remember this." There was something, and yet we found Muslim young people recognizing that they were facing much grave danger. Surur, lawyer who works with us, has been going to Nizamuddin. She's saying that they're handpicking young people of Muslim identity, locking them up in large numbers, trying to terrorize them, etc. Despite this, we are seeing this really, Muslim young people are coming out in large numbers, in trust and in faith, and there is a reaching out. But there is also an anguish of a history of exclusion. Yes. The Dalit student has also faced exclusion in these periods. So one question which I wanted all of you to think about was that we are seeing the student as this group, but the student, there is disadvantages of caste and religious identity, and is this movement able to overcome it, and if so, in what ways? That was number one. But I'll just put out two sort of slightly longish questions, so give you time to react to whatever you want to. The other was the extraordinary way that our young people are expressing their rebellion. It's very different from what Zoya and I must be about the same age. So we've grown up, with those revolutionary songs written by Sahir and some and so on. And there was a certain way of protest, there was a certain idiom of it. Our young people are using their own idiom completely. And I mean, I just laugh and laugh at the brilliance of their satire. You know, what they're saying at each, guy stands up and says, I'm not being funded by anyone. I'm hating this government for free.
Yes.
I mean, like wow, and so many others, of course, somewhat risk jokes about Modi and so on. And everyone has this melody.
Yes.
Yeah.
I collected a few this morning also.
They're all putting melody in their mouth, and I mean, there is so much fun. There is, it's a very serious protest, but they're doing it in their own way. Just like there's Hindutva pop, they've created their own pop. It's got the same beat as the Hindutva pop, except it is about all of this. There's, to my mind, and this is the last thing that I want, that young women, they're playing a central role. They're coming out. I mean, the iconic thing of her stopping this whole bus of kids. But there was another one where the bus was going, it stopped at a traffic light. Somebody came and just opened the door and said, come out, come out. I mean, they're having fun in the middle.
That was also in Bombay.
That was also, they're having fun. There was a water cannon thing in Bihar, and they're doing a rain dance. They say, do more, we'll do a rain dance. I mean, like, they are protesting in a way. And so they're protesting against many things. I think they're protesting against this government. They're protesting against the Hindutva ideology, but they're also protesting against patriarchy, the kinds of controls their family holds on them. They're protesting, in a sense, against their WhatsApp uncles. They're protesting against how their schools and colleges bind them down. They just freed themselves. So much is happening. I think that we have to, not just what they are demanding, but how they are just coming out. And you beat me, and I mean, this girl going up to the cops there, uncle, when are you going to beat us next? Just give us warning. I'm wearing chappals, so I'll lose them. I'll wear shoes. Just tell me when you're. I mean, who does this? I mean, there's something that is unfolding. So both on the question of those who have not had this solidarity over the last 12 years, those young people and their participation. That's one. And the second is this mode of protest, which is completely their own. And what it says to you, Zoya.
Well, there are just a lot of issues that you've raised. But let me just say briefly three things. One, the point that you made earlier, which is that this is not the first student protest during this tenure of this government, because the anti-CAA protests were also largely student-led. But I think there is a big difference between that protest and this, and that is that was predominantly Muslim. Although I do think that 30 or 40% people participating in the anti-CAA protests were non-Muslims. But it was seen and perceived as a Muslim protest. Now this protest, that is to say the CJP-led protest, demanding the education minister's resignation, I think is significant because it cuts across class, caste and community, and therefore does not lend itself to easy vilification that was done of the protesters against the CAA. Secondly, I think, and very importantly, government has responded very differently to these two protests. As far as the CAA protest was concerned, it went on from mid-December 2019 till COVID was announced on 24th March 2020. So it went on for full 3 months, and possibly could have gone on if COVID had not intervened. But the government did not, in those 4 months or 3 months, think it fit to talk to the anti-CAA protesters even once. Here, the government has, no doubt it happened after a month, and no doubt it happened, on the, let's say in the last 3 or 4 days, but there have already been 2 rounds of talks. Very brief, we know, but nonetheless the government has thought it fit to talk to the protesters. Government thought it fit to go and visit Sonam Wangchuk, who was on a fast, and so on. None of this was done as far as I think it was only fair that we must remember that there's a the anti-CAA protests were harshly suppressed. You mentioned AMU, Jamia. I think what happened in UP, not just in AMU, but all across UP, it was very harshly suppressed. So I think it's important to see that government response has been very, very, very different in the 2 protests. And your second question
was about how they're fighting and what they're...
Yes, now that I think is very interesting, and that point has already been made by you and by Saroj as well as Yamini. This is obviously very different. But I think, even in the anti-CAA protests, I mean, if you look at the posters there, I mean, the posters that you see today are very similar to the posters that were on display. For example, जब हिंदू मुस्लिम राजी तो क्या करेगा नाज़ी, वो उस ज़माने में जब एंटी-CAA प्रोटेस्ट हुए थे तो यही पोस्टर था. अब लोगों को ये लग रहा है कि ये पहली बार हुआ है, मगर हमें तो याद है और आपको भी याद होगा कि सिर्फ शाहीन बाग में नहीं, जहाँ जहाँ प्रोटेस्ट हो रहे थे CAA के, वहाँ पे ये सारे बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग पोस्टर्स उस वक्त भी थे. There's one other very big difference between the anti-CAA protests and what's happening now. The anti-CAA protests were entirely within the 4 walls of the Constitution. They were reading the preamble everywhere. That was focused on rights. There was a feeling that a section of our society is being denied its rights. Now, this movement is not really about rights. This movement is anger. A popular anger, outrage, one against the the remark that was made by the Chief Justice of India, calling unemployed youth cockroaches. I think that really triggered this movement. So it's not even today, and I think like all of us, I've also been following this very closely. I don't think the language of rights is being used here. What people are talking about is the crisis of education, educational reform, the fraud in education, the constant paper leaks. I mean, there have been 41 paper leaks in the last 2 years. And if we look at the last 12 years, apparently there have been 152 paper leaks and nothing much. I mean, the Prime Minister has at least 4 times in the last couple of years said this will not recur. Even as this protest has been underway, there's news of paper leaks in I think one of the universities, one university, probably in Rajasthan, I think again. So I think this is much more sectoral, but I think what is very interesting about this protest is that obviously it has gone beyond education. It is about governance, it is about accountability, it's about the failure of the government to live up to its promises. And thirdly, I think what is very interesting is that this movement now, as you said, has taken a life of its own. It has gone beyond an individual, it has gone beyond the Cockroach Janata Party, it has gone beyond Sonam Wangchuk. Important part, I mean, surely the Cockroach Janata Party and all of them, their main leaders played an important part. But it's gone much beyond it. Otherwise, it is hard to explain this countrywide movement. You just read out a list of cities. Now, surely that can't be because of the wonderful leadership of the Cockroach Janata Party. So this is spontaneous, it is organic, it is dominated by young, and I do think that humor and satire have played a very, very important part, because that makes it easier for the young to participate in this movement, because on the face of it, it seems as though it's not political. while it is deeply political, but when you express it in the language of humor and satire, it seems that it's not political. And I think there is nothing more damaging to an authoritarian government and a strongman leader than when he or she is made fun of. And I think what is so interesting and fascinating about this movement is the irreverence of the youth, the irreverence of their humor, and the kinds of, I won't go into all the abusive language that is being used. I think that is avoidable. But anyway, that's, we're not getting into that. But the way in which the language, the vocabulary, and the memes that are being made about the Prime Minister, I doubt if the Prime Minister would have ever expected that something like this would happen. And I think what is very interesting is that obviously the government, there's a huge miscalculation on the part of the government. They thought that by allowing this protest, and let's face it, when Abhijit Deepke arrived from Boston, he was virtually presented with a permission by the government, and he was allowed to go straight from the airport to Jantar Mantar, and then of course protests were held in different cities by CJP at that stage. At that stage, CJP was important before the 20th of June. But after the 20th of June, obviously it's very different. But the government thought that by giving them the long rope and allowing this protest to go on, it will it will fizzle out. But they were spectacularly wrong. And I think it was a complete miscalculation. But to be fair, it's not just that the government was wrong. I think none of us probably thought that, this was a flood of people.
Nobody expected.
Can you imagine that? There are estimates of between 1 to 2 lakh people in central Delhi. And to that, please add another lakhs of people who were participating in these protests across the country. So I think there's something so wonderful and something so encouraging about the protest, and I think it has really taken all of us by surprise, but it's a wonderful surprise.
Yamini, you were trying to come in, so I just want, I think we agree that this has become a movement, I think, for young people saying we want a better future and we want freedom. I think these are the two things they are demanding.
I would add one more thing here, which is that we are saying protest. It's true that it started as a protest against, young people being called cockroaches, or protest, against the paper leak, protest seeking the resignation of the Education Minister, Dharmendra Pradhan. But that's what I was saying earlier, that what started as one thing morphs into something else, right? Yeah. And that's where you see that the back end, the back end of anger and that huge stock of that entire magma, kind of, in the course of a day, it just came blasting, right?
Yes.
No, but did you think, as a much younger person, did you think that there was all this accumulated anger? Were we really, were you aware?
No, I think I was aware. Look at the 13th April, Noida working class protest.
Yeah.
That was really at a very high pitch. Yeah, very, very young workers. Yeah. And very few people took note of that.
Most in their 20s.
Yeah, in the 20s, and they had already made excellent use of social media. Right. The Noida workers, right? So the plants, the factories like Matheson, which makes parts for expensive cars, So entire Noida is burning. There's a workers it was like an uprising, right? Still there are so many people jailed. Similarly, you have in Manesar, in Gurgaon, before that in the oil refineries of Panipat, Barauni, in Madhya Pradesh, in Singrauli. In fact, there was a kind of a, spiral of virality of movements already. Yeah. So the Noida itself was a culmination of so many other working class kind of this thing. Yeah. And here also you will see that what started as a kind of a middle class, upper caste kind of a movement here, the Cockroach Janata Party, even though of course there were already a lot there. But soon you saw that right now, Right
is
now,
not
as you were using the term non-elite, but I would just want to call them working class.
Yeah.
The ones who are actually fighting the cops
true.
there,
That is
who
true.
are actually on the parliament street today, and they don't care what is going on inside in the dais anymore now, right? And yet, even the dais, if you look at the actual, the old venue there at Jantar Mantar, the volunteers, and this will be something very interesting, that earlier till the 20th, when 20th they completely demolished the stage and everything. Till that point, the volunteers inside were wearing nice t-shirts and all, written volunteer, and they were completely like properly listed, and maybe they had given their other cards there and all that. Now the volunteers are anonymous boys.
Yes.
And the
And
MCD,
girls.
the MCD is not collecting the garbage. Who is collecting the garbage? These boys.
That it is really quite lovely to see them. Yes.
It's a self-managed space right now. They are.
Actually leaderless.
Yeah, it is. It is leaderless. And the other thing about abusive language,
Or self-led.
Yeah, self-led. Self-managed and everything. This thing about abusive language. We used to call safe space. Movement and protest sites should be safe spaces. No transphobic language, no homophobic language and all that. If you go by that criteria, this is the most unsafe space right now. Trans people have also said, kind of. But the thing is that, that's the thing, that we are forced to revise our categories of what we had designated as safe and unsafe, because this is the most safe place.
On this,
Hold
I
on, this is
completely
the,
disagree. In
this
fact,
is
the
the
women-
safest place.
And women have and
This is the
sexual
safest
minorities have
place.
said that they've never
Women
felt
have
as
said
safe.
repeatedly-
This is the safest place. That is the thing.
They said-
that is the paradox.
And they said the same. And they said the same thing in Shine Bagh. It struck me a lot. The women said that late in the night we were there among men. We never felt unsafe.
Exactly,
So-
exactly.
so it-
No, but the Seinbach protest was very sane.
There were a lot of, just even this afternoon, there were a lot of trans, symbols, people mobilizing. So it's in that.
We agree with everything else except this. I think
No, you see,
it
earlier what was
constructed
there.
as a safe.
No, what I was saying, listen.
He's saying
What I'm
despite
saying,
the language,
yeah,
it is safe.
exactly.
It
That
was
means,
safe.
our earlier formulation. What I'm saying, our earlier formulation was that if you use politically incorrect language, that automatically makes a space unsafe. That does not seem true.
That is
So that's what I'm saying. It is challenging all the shibboleths of even activists and social movements and of the left also here. So I think this is the challenge this
But can
movement
I
is
just
throwing.
add one line before Yamini, because you just mentioned left. I think we have to give much greater credit than has been given so far to the left organization. They have played a very important part. The media has not highlighted, all of us have also not highlighted it. But I think it all started with the participation of left-wing student organizations, the SFI, the ISA, AISF, and various other left-wing organizations. I think they really provided the social.
A moral toward to it, I think.
Well, also the numbers, the people. I mean,
I endorse this completely because in the earlier days when I'd go.
And Neha Bora has played a very, I think she was really right in the forefront. Now, of course, she got overshadowed by everything else. But I think she's been a rock of...
Unfortunately, that's what I thought. When the Dipke and these other guys, they were kind of missing on the 20th, and Chandrasekhar Azad comes there. I was also kind of wondering, and that's where I have a kind of a question to myself as well as to our left friends. Is that why weren't any of someone like Neha, but Neha was not doing well at that time. She was in a hunger strike. But there were other people from the left organizations, who could have, emerged there
They were not.
along with Chandrasekhar. So they were not able to give the leadership.
No, they were not
They
given
are constantly playing the under-laboring kind of a factor,
so they
but
didn't-
they're not coming at the forefront,
They didn't find the space.
But
And
they
Cha-
should.
and
You see, they have been
Chandrasekhar
there since
pushed
day one.
himself
They
in.
wanted, but they were not able to give
Yeah,
the
I know this quite
That
clearly.
is what I have.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
They wanted
And
the
I think
space.
Harsh would know better.
They wanted the space. They were not given it, and they remained courteous. They said, "There's something larger to be supported. We'll do it in what." On
No, I'm
whatever
not
terms."
saying officially, that the Cockroach Janata Party should allow them. I'm saying on the 20th, it was open field. anybody could have, hopped on that truck, and they were missing, It was only Chandrasekhar Azad.
20 days before that, or 4 weeks before that, I think the very
Yeah,
fact
that time,
there
that's true, that's true. They were,
There
absolutely,
was a stage, an elevated
absolutely.
stage.
And they were
Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
were never on that elevated stage. They
But
were
you're
Yeah.
right, on the 20th, the left
Yeah.
would have been right
Absolutely,
there.
absolutely. Even now, what stops the left guys to be there,
Yamini, I want you to take a deep breath because we've said a lot of things, and my earlier questions as well. How would you
Turning
like?
out to be a rambunctious conversation.
Yes, you will.
As it should be. As it should be. Given
Such are the
what we're
times.
talking about.
Such are the times.
Given the nature of the movement.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yamini.
No, I think that there's a lot of very important things have been said, and so maybe I'll add a few more layers to what we've all been talking about thus far. I think one really important thing that frames a lot of the nature of the outpouring is that. And the difficulty that the government is facing is that Modi has always projected himself. Think back to 2014. He was the doer against weak coalitions that were unable to get anything done. And he was the person that will bring us maximum governance, minimum government. Remember that phase? And was the chaiwala who, so he's representing the people from the ground, and unlike all these captured Lutyens, Khan Market
Khan
type,
Market
all
gang.
of that sustained, of course, it captured a certain frustration, and it sustained itself for a period of time, enough to be able to kind of consistently blame the past for the problems of the present. Every young kid that is there right now has, as you said, only seen a world where Modi is Prime Minister. And no longer in a third term, which frankly even the best governed third term Prime Minister would confront this, no longer are people willing to take the possibility of a better future in 2047 jab Viksit Bharat hoga, because their current is increasingly looking worse when they had bet on their current being better. And that part of this was papered over by mobilizing around this victimhood, reclaiming, decolonization, Hindutva majoritarianism, which people were willing to, let's call a spade, accept. The majority was willing to accept that, and now it's seeing the limits of that. What makes this hard for government is, unlike in the case of CAA or even to some degree the farmers' protests, they cannot demonize, because what triggered this mobilization was an act of their own failure. It wasn't a new set of legislation, new laws, an imagination of an economy, all of that that was coming in. It was something that even they cannot hide from. Nobody can say that, so what is their defense? Their defense is, we very quickly did a second exam. Even they look insincere when they are saying so, right? So I think that that's a very important part of what has then opened up the space. So, Zoya, in your remarks, you rightly started out by saying, let's make the distinctions between what CAA was, what the farmers' protests were, and what we are seeing today. And to my mind, one of the big distinctions is the only thing that was the glue that was holding the legitimacy of the Prime Minister was this projection of "main karunga, na sounga, na khaunga, main karunga." I'm the, Obama, my friend, calls me and says, please sleep sometimes. But, despite that lack of sleep, he is not able to do anything. And that is now reached a point where, it has become an opening. The second thing I think that is
I like your comment, despite lack of sleep, he's not able to do very much.
I don't sleep very much. But yeah, I suspect. I'm a mother of 2 small children. I know what lack of sleep is. His eyes don't look like they've got big bags under them. Anyhow, that's aside. I think the other really important thing that is shaping the way in which this is coming out, the reason why I think that the Dharmendra Pradhan resign framing is so important is because what it is saying is very simple. It is saying an elected government has to be accountable to its people. And in the hubris, because the response of this government is shaped by its from Gujarat days attitude of blocking out the people and never responding to the pressure of the people. I mean, imagine, and the Godi media makes it all sound as though this is a sign of strength. You're in a democracy, and your strength is that you don't want to answer to the people, whether it is the press or the Janta. And the people are saying, I'm done with this. So my minor disagreement with you, Zoya, is that I actually think this is at the core. It may not be articulated in standard constitutional language, but the core of constitutional values is very much there, and what they're asking for is very fundamental democratic principle. From there, the Tanashahi nahi chalegi, all the old, these are slogans from the CAA movement as well, are coming together, but they're taking a new life form and evolving. The other thing is that I agree that this is, there's diversity, there are a lot of workers, workers' movements, or non-elite, ordinary people, but there are also elite. That coming together is interesting and powerful in that it kind of brings all the attempts to create coalitions are now actually emerging organically. It may be around, there are contradictions. Like to me, the biggest contradiction is to say Hindu-Muslim nahi chalega, but still not internalize all the complexity that you said. But everybody is standing together in some joint cause. And the reason why the social media and all is spreading in the way that it is, in the language that it is that it is also partially elite driven, who has smartphones, who, so all of that is adding into creating a new grammar for protest and a new grammar for democratic accountability that I think is very, very important and at the heart of everything that we are seeing. I just want to say one more thing. I think we also, there is also another interesting contradiction that is emerging. And that contradiction is this constant desire for articulation of a political protest outside of the formal party political space. Why is it that CJP had to emerge? It may or may not be supported in the background by all kinds of political formations, and now they are reaching out on the main stage to all the formal party politics. But a CJP had to emerge for the ordinary person to come on the street. The Congress has been doing their protests from May on the same issue. The Indian Youth Congress has been out on the streets. They've also had water cannons. They've done all. Rahul Gandhi goes to Kota, makes a powerful speech. Dehradun, all sorts of things are happening. Chhatro ke gunj. Yet the ordinary Aam Janta is not turning up for their protests. They are coming here where they're not even fully convinced about the CJP leadership. So it's almost like, and this is a very unique moment in our democracy that should both exhilarate us and frighten us. And we have to think through how to walk through this path, which is, I'll just finish my thought, which is the political accountability is being sought in an explicit demand of a non-partisan political space. I think this is different from the India Against Corruption, where actively politics was demonized. All politicians are horrible. That's not what the language that is being deployed here. But I don't want to be on a formal political platform to make my political position clear. And at the same time, elections are being won. The fact is that May 4th was only 2 months before, and all this pain that is being described here, it didn't just happen after the paper leaks, it's been there for a while. There is one narrative of electoral capture, which we cannot ignore at all, but there is also electoral legitimacy that is coming to this particular political regime and its leadership. So are we seeing two very different things? Is accountability that is at the heart of democracy no longer being recognized through electoral processes? Something else is being asked for through electoral legitimacy. And are we looking for something else? And through democratic institutions. And are we, and is the democratic sentiment, is what I call it, I may be right or wrong, but is that democratic sentiment, that democratic impulse, finding its way in non-electoral forms? What does that mean for the kind of democracy we are going to be?
So both of you are longing to respond.
No, I just want to, I think to bring some specificity to what is kind of maybe new about this, because I think we're all grappling with that. So you compared it with the anti-CAA protests, or say you can even compare it with the farmers' movement. A lot of people are doing that. I would actually compare it, I think it comes closer to the Nirbhaya protest in terms of where it has finally landed up, not like the CJP, that part, but where this, what I want to call the feral underclass, has kind of given a charge to this, right? Which is where we are today, really. Otherwise, maybe the CCP leadership, on their own might have done something else, right? So this feral underclass which is there, it was precisely this kind of a feral underclass who came and had an immediate antagonistic relationship with the police. And the fact that not just that there was police brutality on the 20th of July, but after that also the lot of the protesters there are actually also connecting with their own lives, that they have faced the brutality of the system at different levels in their neighborhoods, in their workplace. So they are people coming from such backgrounds. So for them there is a continuity there. So it's not just that only because 20th happened that they are, otherwise you can't explain that magma that we were saying, that there was this back end kind of an anger. Where is that coming from, right? Because it is really people from that section of society. And if you look at the Nirbhaya protest, which was really a lot of the students from the coaching institutes in Lakshminagar.
Yeah, that came.
That came. So in that sense, this is more closer to the Nirbhaya protest. The other thing, let me just complete this, which is the difference with the CAA protest. You see, both the CAA and the farmer protest had kind of formal elders, notables from within the community, religious institutions that were giving a kind of a vocabulary, discipline and shape, right? When I went to Singhu border, I could actually see there was a makeshift Gurudwara there on the spot. And there was a kind of a discipline there, right? Here, this is not just challenging the old language of social movements on the left by being politically incorrect, okay? But it is also challenging, not challenging really, there is a lack of any kind of support by religious institutions in a kind of a leadership role,
It's challenging
right?
all authority.
Yeah, all authority,
Yes.
and political parties, as you rightly said, even they are not there. So this is really kind of a free space in a multiple kind of a sense. So no formal political parties. The old social movement activist left is also missing. Their language is not there right now, right? Religious institutions are not there. So I think in that sense, the CAA protest and the farmers movement, in terms of opposing Modi, yes, there is a similarity, right? In opposition to Modi. But in terms of their own positive content, there is a huge difference.
Saroj, let
right?
us two other, both longing to come in. So Zoya,
Please do, please.
Zoya and Yamini.
While there is this extraordinary upsurge that we have witnessed over the last few days, that's extremely important. But at the same time, the fact that it doesn't have a structure or an organization, and that their principal demand as of today is resignation of the education minister. Now, from that, of course, what has been expressed in the agitation is much more than that. It is, it is really an argument for greater democracy, surely. Greater democracy, greater accountability, better governance, and so on, and educational reform. But really speaking, as of now, that is their main demand, and government so far is not really willing to concede on that. That is a resignation of the education minister. What the government has come up with is fast-track courts. Now, fast-track courts is really no solution to these wide-ranging problems, because fast-track courts are not really a solution to systemic failure, because what we are talking about is a larger systemic failure. And I think the young people were also talking about that systemic failure. In fact, when the government talks of fast-track courts, I'm reminded of Lokpal. I mean, the entire anti-corruption movement again had only one demand, and that was Lokpal. This movement has one demand, and that is resignation of the education minister. Now, the Lokpal, okay, government, the UPA government conceded Lokpal. A Lokpal bill was introduced, debated for years, almost for years after the BJP came to power in 2014. A Lokpal was not even appointed. But even when Lokpals have been appointed, that has really been no solution to the endemic corruption. In fact, there's all indication that corruption may well have increased in the past 12 years. So I think, therefore, while we must celebrate the youth upsurge, the uprising, which borders on a revolt against the government, we must also think that can this really be sustained in this way beyond the point?
I'll come to that at the
I
end.
think that
Yeah,
is, and there what I mean, and I'll just end with this. I think really, if there is a solution to this, and then as someone who's obviously interested in higher education and was part of a higher education institution for 40 years, I certainly think that the solution is structural change. And really the solution is that you have to revive public universities. You have to revive public education. There is no other way out. You have to increase the budget for education. In fact, far from increasing it, there is a decrease in the budget for education. So, changing an education secretary or even getting the resignation of the education minister is not a solution. I think that the crisis of education in India is very deep. And that crisis can only be resolved through structural change and also moving away from privatization and commercialization of education to much greater emphasis on public institutions and public education.
So, Zoya, that is true. But when we look at our neighbors, Nepal as well as Bangladesh, the specific demand was actually a very small one. In Nepal, it was just internet closure for many days, which led to that revolt. And in Bangladesh, it was the Awami League taking over government jobs.
Bangladesh was much bigger.
But I'm
It was
saying,
against the Awami League.
no, I'm saying that the specific demand,
the specific
demand. What I'm trying to say, the triggers are always small. I feel also the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan is also a trigger for something larger.
Very important.
But I think
it's a trigger.
why Bangladesh and Nepal became bigger was particularly in Nepal, there was also this Nepo baby thing, which is not here, by the way, which is absent here. So if you want to add Nepo baby to this, then can you imagine it will be so
Well,
explosive.
I also think that it's worth us. We have a much deeper. So, there's been a more stable, authoritarian but stable government for a long period of time, perhaps mirroring Bangladesh a little bit more. But I think we also in India have a much longer history and therefore much greater absorptive capacity for protest in a way that and it kind of holds. It's the core. It's why even in our darkest moment of our democracy, we still have found a democratic grammar through which we are expressing our anger. And it has not become so immediately aggressive and potentially violent. And I think that that's something for us to celebrate. I've been asked this question a lot. Particularly international observers want to kind of try and draw this comparison between what's happening in India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, to some degree even the United States. After all, Mamdani is also an expression and the DSA is an expression of the same thing. The young across the world are disenchanted with existing systems, and forms of political expression are shifting as a consequence of that. But the ways in which the shift is occurring and the challenges that the young are throwing up upon us are, I think, quite distinct and different. And so I would be a little careful for us to make complete comparisons. But yes, it's a sort of Tolstoyan way of everyone is unhappy, but we're also very unhappy in our own very distinct ways. And so our paths to happiness are by definition going to be different.
So,
No, but I think one thing very important that has happened is that this agitation and protest has really challenged the legitimacy and authority of this.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. How is Modi going to govern
whatever
in any
be
way
the
after this
outcome,
is very hard.
India has changed forever
Yes,
from
I
July
think
20.
there's
Absolutely.
But if I can
There's
just say
no-
one, really, the other, there's a demand for governance But unlike in the past, where that demand for governance was also always articulated as a separation from politics. So, and the AAP story is really important in this. What did AAP constantly present itself? I am doing great things for education. I'm a non-ideological party. This constant, what is really important about what the students are articulating, even in their new and Saki, I mean, this grammar they're using is sounding familiar to me because this is all I hear from my children every day. All the teenagers are watching memes and coming out with all kinds of Saki comments back, but it kind of has an edginess to it. But that edginess is anchored in this broader democratic grammar.
But
So
it's not
kind
ideological.
it is not ideological, but it's an
that, I think
opportunity.
we-
It is an opportunity. That's what I'm saying. I think that what they are asking for is different today from what was asked of the past. It is asking for
I'll come back to closing comments.
a democratic conversation around governance. So it sees that governance cannot be achieved by the strong man, telling you कि अभी विकसित भारत आने वाला है.
No,
It
but
is
I think-
asking for a democratic version or engagement
I
with
would
critical issues.
Make one point, which is that Yamini earlier said that, and you also made the point, that Congress and Rahul Gandhi have been organizing protests against NEET and paper leaks for a long time, and that they are not able to attract the kind of attract people in the same way as this. But that's exactly the point, that party-based protests are seen to be ideological. They seem to be completely directed against the government. This protest has attracted people precisely because it has, in a way, transcended ideology, and at the same time, it is concrete. It is speaking to the concerns of students, of young people, and it is expressing their discontent, their grievances against this government. And I think what this movement has shown us for elderly people like us is that the government can be challenged, and it has indeed been challenged.
Absolutely.
I would say, yeah.
Can I, because I'd love for this conversation actually to go on till late at night. But I want to make 2 points, and I want to request you all to respond. First is that I see, I loved I think this is a movement of democratic aspiration of young people. I mean, they may not be using that language, but it is essentially saying we want our freedom, we want people to care, we want people to listen. So but I also saw, and Zoya might disagree, but I felt non-violence is something that they have internalized as a value very consciously. I've heard it over and over again.
Of course.
And I do feel in a strange way it might sound to Gandhians something that is heretic, but it was almost a satyagraha in the Instagram age. It really was. I mean, the image the young man who sort of knelt down when he was being beaten by the police, and he did this, and he bowed, and he said, "Beat me more." I mean, if I was doing a painting to explain to young people what satyagraha means, I couldn't have done it better. They did it spontaneously. There was continuous. When I was walking with the crowd, they kept saying non-violence, non-violence. They said, "Hum Gandhi ji ke aulad hain." They kept saying this. So I feel that there is a politics to it. It's not electoral politics. There's a suspicion of even political parties, because you might say something, but there is a democratic aspiration and a foundation of Gandhian Satyagraha, which I feel is a very valuable one, is one thing, whether you agree. The other thing, but however, the climate of fear that has been cultivated over the last 3 or 4 days is slowly beginning to resemble Manipur and Kashmir. The same fear, कि पता नहीं कब what is going to happen. The shops are being closed, metros are internet is not being allowed. Huge numbers of CRP are coming. You and I don't know what is going to happen in the coming days, but I have a deep sense of dread. And so I wanted to, the question last question is that if we agree that this is a movement of a profound democratic aspiration founded on principles of non-violence, non-violent resistance. If this is what young people are doing, and if they're going to be subjected to the kind of brutal suppression that they did in the CA protests and they've done in Kashmir and Manipur and so on, what is the future going to look like? I mean, it's an unfair question to ask because history is being made at this moment. But I still want us to really reflect on, young people are saying, let us be truly democratic and let us not use violence for change. And they're going to be subjected to, if they're subjected to really brutal suppression now, what's going to happen? Zoya?
That is what the future holds.
Yeah.
Well, I think what this protest or agitation and movement has achieved already is very significant. It has disrupted the legitimacy of the government. It has, above all, disrupted BJP's dominance of the online social universe. That itself is so significant. The fact that within 2 days, some 20 million followers joined Abhijit Dipke's call when he was still in Boston is itself, that's what I think got the government going. Two, it has put the government on the back foot. Government is blinking and the government doesn't know how to deal with it, partly because these are people who have supported this government. Many of them are people who have voted for this government. Let's not forget that the BJP gets the largest proportion of the youth vote in 2014, in 2019 and in 2024. In 2024, the youth vote for BJP came down by 1%. It was 40% in 2019, it came down to 39%. So these are people who support the BJP, and that is the reason why they are finding, I think they're completely shocked, flabbergasted, shocked by the way in which this movement has developed. And I agree with you that this movement is important precisely because from the beginning it was non-violent, and the leadership, such as it was, made it a point to emphasize. And even on the 20th, I think when they were speaking from the stage, they were repeatedly saying no violence, this has to be non-violent. So in that sense, there is a deeply Gandhian dimension to this movement, and the very fact that there was an indefinite fast by Sonam Wangchuk and some of the young students also obviously makes it clear that the satyagraha dimension was certainly there. But I think the future, there is a future in the sense that I think the youth are not going to be easily satisfied now, even by whatever the government is offering. There has to be some basic issues have to be addressed, of education, of job opportunities, of employment. I think some of that will have to be addressed.
But this government is incapable of it.
Well, it is incapable, but in that sense, the discontent will remain, and it might show itself up in 2029 when this government might well be voted out of power.
Yeah, I think, I think people are actually also thinking about this Modi BJP government. They're thinking that their very power is illegitimate,
That is it.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because
And
if
that
they're...
has come through.
Yeah, because it's like really, it's very rare to see this kind of an opposition to a government. If they had already agreed to the resignation, early on, say, even on the 21st, if they had done it, even on the 21st, it would have been fine. But now the kind of news that is coming, every day, the kind of show of arrogance and power that is coming from their side, the fact that, I think you just said that they met in Constitution Club, I have not checked, like today's talk. The fact that these young leaders, of CJP are saying, we are not going to go to you. Now you come to us, or we meet in a neutral territory, Constitution Club. So the fact that the leaders are doing, and they are also doing under the pressure of the base.
Yeah.
So I think
Absolutely.
people are thinking that their power itself is illegitimate. So I think that is one thing. This antagonism is like at all
So
time
what it means,
high.
Saroj, is that the fear of government
Yeah,
Is
is
broken.
gone.
It's
I think
completely
that
gone.
is the biggest
Fear of government is gone.
The legitimacy of the government's
Itself is
ability
gone.
to govern
Yeah,
is gone.
it's gone. And if you look at the 2011-12, the kind of anger against the UPA government, I think this is much higher than
Much
that.
higher,
Right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
one. The other thing, what you asked about where this might go, and you talked about if there will be a brutal repression, and I really fear that.
I fear that hugely. I can't
Because
sleep thinking this.
they are there. I was there till like really in the early hours of the morning yesterday, and they're like eye to eye. Anything can happen anytime. Yesterday also there was tear gas. Every day there's tear gassing going on. That's not being reported much. So anytime there might be a really bad situation, and that can lead to many casualties and all of that. The other thing you pointed out, and I find that interesting, the way you brought in the notion of non-violence and satyagraha, and both calling it democratic or non-violence. I also think maybe should be like, do we have only these categories? Democratic or undemocratic, violent or non-violent. Can we go beyond that? That's one of my suggestions here. But on the satyagraha thing, I think this is because satyagraha has a notion of truth.
Yes.
But here the crowd, if you want to now use the term Gen Z, they don't seem to really, work with this notion of a truth. For Gandhi, truth was very important.
I don't agree. I don't
No,
agree.
let me just tell you this. So I think here this is a kind of a satyagraha without the kind of ascetic kind of righteousness, because there was a kind of ascetic righteousness
There I'll agree.
in that in Gandhian notion of satyagraha, because there is no righteousness here. They are mocking at themselves also, and they are using unparliamentary language, to say the least, the way they have described their own protest. So they are not taking themselves seriously. So there was a kind of
I think they do. I think the young
the
people have brought them
reverentiality which
together.
was there in Gandhian
The
politics.
problem is, I think there's another issue here, which is that the way in which the mobilization unfolded and the hunger strike, Sonam Wangchuk's decision to go on a hunger strike, it was a unilateral decision in a funny way. It was not like there had been any engagement. I mean, Gandhi was talking to people. He was constantly talking about his own thinking and writing and talking to people and telling us what is compelling him to take these decisions. And often his hunger strikes were as a kind of response and retreat. Something has gone wrong, and I'm not going to use my hunger strike as a kind of political calling card to bargain. Right now, the hunger strike is almost been treated like it was a bargaining chip. It certainly has moral. I'm not taking away from it at all, but I think we have to understand its subtleties.
Yamini, when I call it Gandhian, I'm not talking about the hunger strike.
No, I'm with you.
I'm
I'm with
that's
you.
what- that's
I'm
what-
with you.
The
that's what-
hunger strike,
that's
I mean,
what-
Gandhiji never used the hunger
Yeah,
strike
exactly.
against
No,
the
no,
British.
I'm with you.
It was never used against the British. It was satyagraha.
Absolutely.
I feel post July 20th,
It has changed. No,
are you
I
seeing
agree.
satyagraha?
I'm with you. I
Oh,
just,
there is
just
definitely
wanted
a
us to
satyagraha
bring
thing, that
subtlety
example
out.
that you
Yeah.
give.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you beat me up.
Yeah.
But there is what we call post-truth. There is a strong post-truth element within which the satyagraha exists.
I'm not sure. But anyway, your closing remarks.
I think, just to say two things. I think one is the fear of what is going to happen and the fear of the brutality is very real, and you can feel it every day. Every day as I'm about to go, someone will call in and say, are you there? Don't go, X, Y, Z. So it's there, it's alive, and it is very, very scary. But if, God forbid, the powers that be were to make this awful decision, it will tip this country's youth are not going to sit back and allow this to happen. Everything we have seen in the last few days tells us every time the state has demonstrated its hubris, organically people have come. Before Saturday morning when Sonam Wangchuk was picked up, this was a small-ish protest.
Yeah.
It was there, it had some moral value, it was creating, people were asking questions. It grew and it grew and it grew and it grew with each time the state showing its brutality. People are saying we have had enough. if this government is not willing to listen to that, it is making a colossal mistake, which will, the price of which is going to be paid by us and our fellow citizens, especially our young. I hope they don't have to, but if they do, the consequences will be felt by those who wield the power. Will not be acceptable. It just will not. So I really hope that some sense will prevail, because nobody wants brutality of this nature to unfold on our streets, and that the core democratic sentiment that the people of India have demonstrated will also find its moral power, will push this very government that is filled with hubris to at least arrive at some concession that will allow us to move forward. And then the hard work comes back to all of us and all the young people who participated in this protest to really shed ourselves. And I think a lot of what Saroj is also pushing us, and all of us are pushing each other, to shed ourselves of old frames, bring what was valuable from those together, and engage in a new discourse for a better future.
I think that's a wonderful summary of a very, very, very rich conversation. I think we're seeing history being made in a very short period of time by really spirited young people. I hope our government doesn't let them down. And I think that, and I hope our older generation doesn't let them down. Let us see how.
And the government has already used pellet guns. That's proved now.
And pellet guns is
Yeah,
I mean, so
that's like too much.
I can't
How can they do
believe.
that?
I mean, I just read this morning that one young man has 19-year-old has lost 1% chance of vision coming back.
Yeah.
We cannot do this to our young people. We
Yes,
cannot.
I think
do
the
this.
journalist guy who was shot.
No, this is another boy.
Acha, another boy. Okay.
So we cannot do this to our young people. I hope we don't let our young people down. And if we do, we need to stand with them in this long battle. I was wondering how to end, but my mind goes back to Tagore's very well. You know, just speaking it now, where the mind is without fear, and where the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. This is the India that our young people are longing for. We cannot deny them this.
I think a very appropriate note to end this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ये दाग दाग उजाला ये शब कसीदा सहर वो इंतजार था जिसका ये वो सहर तो नहीं